I'm going to go ahead and go into the part of the service where I give the message. Is that all right with y'all? So I'm going to be honest with you all. I agonized a lot about what to share today. I almost felt like I was dying, like it was be my last service ever, with the pressure that I was feeling to be able to share something with you all. And normally, I do get sort of this cosmic download at some point, and that gives me joy at that moment because I know that I'm being guided to share with you all what I'm supposed to share. And I kept getting downloads and downloads and downloads, and I kept rewriting and writing. And what I finally came to realize was that Spirit was just asking me to speak from my heart today with you all. And so I'm going to ask if that's okay with y'all here today. So I'm going to ask, as I speak from my heart, I would really love for each and every one of you to listen with your heart. You think you can do that? I'm going to ask everyone to put their hand over their heart and say, the God within listens with the heart. So, part of what I'd like to do as well, as I speak and we all listen, is to also create this energy field here for us today. Because some things can be really difficult, and some things can be really painful, and some things can be really inconvenient. And so, as I said today, I invoke the Holy Spirit into this room. I invoke the Holy Spirit within each and every one of you to show up in this room. I call forth all of the good energies of the ages and sages, all of our spiritual ancestors that helped build this community, all our spiritual ancestors from the Unity movement into this space. I call forth all of my ancestors, and I call forth in the name and through the nature, Jesus. And we open up here today. We open up here today to just have, I think, a conversation at some level. But what I do want to do as I begin is begin in gratitude. I want to first thank the committee that way back when, 2.5 years ago or more, really, selected me as one of the final candidates, and then decided this congregation and the board and that committee decided to select me as a senior minister of Unity of Nashville. It has been one of my greatest joys in life to serve this community. And I'm so grateful of all that was accomplished during my time here. I want to thank the board and the staff, because folks never see what's happening behind the scenes. Folks never see how ugly the business of church can be. And nobody really knows what happens behind those closed doors that bring people to exhaustion and bring people sometimes to not always make decisions in consciousness because there's so much happening that you oftentimes forget about that. But everyone has done all they can do here, and I'm grateful for the support of the staff and the board. I really want to give a shout out to this music team, to our previous music director, David Lukens, and now John Uso and the team with Chris and Vincent and all the vocalists who have graced this stage and the musicians who have graced this stage in my tenure. Coming to this sanctuary on Sunday was the highlight of my week. And no matter what was happening in the world or in the church or emails or things that I was getting, little McNasty emails from all over the place, I loved coming here because it was here that I was reminded who I was and who you all really are. And so I thank everyone for being part of that. I thank the volunteers. Again, there's a small group of people that are really the ones that are moving this church forward. And for those of you who are volunteers, I'm going to ask you to please stand because I want to see your faces and I want to recognize you right now. I see Vic, I see Linda, I see Miriam, I see all of you all who are here. And some of you who don't want to stand, thank you for making my job so much easier and so fulfilling and rewarding. I want to thank a strange thing maybe for some of you, but I want to thank this land. I want to thank this land for giving me so much. I came here as a city girl, knowing the concrete jungle, and coming here and living on this property for a year was such a blessing to be able to, in the first time in my life, understand what people spoke of when they spoke of the nature medicine, plant medicine, animal medicine, hawk medicine. That to me has been one of the most beautiful and unexpected things of my time here. I want to thank my family who sent me off to Nashville with nothing but blessings, who put aside their worries and put aside their fears and their sadness of me leaving to support me and launch me here. Especially my daughter, that it was not easy for her to let her mama go. I love you, Belita. And for my mother, who is my everything. Te quiero mucho, mamita linda. And I know she's watching. All of my siblings, thank you. Whew. And I want to thank my wife, Veronica. Some of you know that she was a little whirlwind here most of the time, doing everything that needed to be done in this church. She really, in many ways, has been my co-minister, and so it's no surprise she started Unity Ministerial School this January. You have been my rock. And no matter what happened here, because there's a lot, days we'd come in and the heat was out, or it was on 100 degrees and Sunday service was about to begin, or there was no sound, and there was no video, and there was no live stream, and the water heater was broken, and so many, many things happened. Nobody will ever know the daily experiences of running this church. But she would always look to me and she would say, "It's part of the show." Her calmness and her demeanor really helped anchor me. And it's been my guiding light, and I share that philosophy of hers with you all, that we think so seriously sometimes about things that are going on. And that was the thing that I learned so early on in my ministry here, that, we read the book years ago, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. But it's so true. And the first time we didn't have sound and a live stream and the audio was, and everybody's flipping their noodle. And I just had this peace over me. And I just said, how did people do ministry years ago. They just jumped on a stage and used their big mouth. I'm like, I got one of those. And that's what we did. It's about just being in that moment and being grateful, and grateful to God for this amazing adventure. Many of you may have heard, my story. I have had absolutely no interest. Let me underscore that again, y'all. No interest in being a minister in four walls. I had said that from the beginning of my ministry, to much the chagrin of some of my instructors and my ministerial instructors, who would say, why are you here? Or you got to know what you want to do. And I said, I don't. I just am following Spirit's guidance for me to be here and show up. And I'm just letting God order my steps. I don't know where I'm going, but I know without a shadow of doubt I'm supposed to be here. So it was during COVID, much to my surprise, that I was being nosy on Unity Worldwide Ministries website, because we do that, right? We're like, who left? Who got fired? Who's coming and going? What's going on? And so I was sort of on the website, just being nosy one day, and I saw the opening for Unity of Nashville, and something stirred inside me, and I thought that was weird, and the thought came in, apply, and I was like, you gotta be joking, and I quickly left out. I was living my best life. I was an associate minister. I had an amazing job, an amazing congregation. I had my business, a successful consulting business, my family, my home, my friends, everything was there. So I thought, that's nutty. But something kept nagging at me, and I kept finding myself coming back to that website till finally I applied. A couple months went by, had totally forgotten this happened, and I get a call that said they were interested in having a virtual interview. I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Okay. Again, not knowing what I was doing, but following my guidance. Took the interview. A couple months later, forgot again, and I was invited to actually come here once the sanctuary opened again with the COVID procedures, to have an in-person talk. It was me and another person. Again, not knowing what was happening, but listening deeply to what Spirit was telling me was mine to do. And so I came here in August, July or August, I'm forgetting now, of 2021. And several weeks later, I received the call that I was selected to be the new senior minister of Unity of Nashville. When that happened, I was still in shock. I didn't know that I would be doing this, but again, Spirit said, you're going. Your will, God, not mine. You're going. And so I signed the contract and I came. And the first moment actually that I stepped on the stage was when I had my interview in person, and immediately I knew I was home. There was something so special about that moment for me. I didn't sleep the whole night in the hotel. I couldn't sleep a wink because it kept gnawing at me that I knew I needed to be here. I knew that I needed to leave everything that I thought I knew about life, about myself, to come here to this community and to show up. I talked that day during my interview about the Garden of Gethsemane, that moment when Jesus took that sacred pause and was really also having a lot of issues about having to move forward in what he knew to be his ministry, what he knew to be his life consequence, what he knew to be the end of his life in so many ways, and yet the beginning of eternal life for everyone in more other ways. I didn't know, fast forward, that in some ways I was coming here at some level to also experience the Jesus experience of not being understood, of being persecuted at some level, of being criticized, of being metaphorically crucified. And that might be really hard for some of you all to hear. I know that might be really hard, but what I want y'all to understand is that I knew at some level what I was stepping into, not consciously, but unconsciously. I knew that Spirit was bringing me here for a divine appointment and purpose. I just didn't know what that meant. And at some level, I really don't still know what that means. I just know that I followed my heart, and here I am. No matter what has happened or not happened here, I am at peace. I really am at peace. And I have nothing but love for this community and for each and every person that is here. No matter what has happened, and I ask in this space of being open-hearted that those of you who feel that I hurt you, I ask for your forgiveness. I ask that you open your heart to allow for that to be. I ask for you to understand that I ask for your forgiveness, sometimes having said things or done things or not having said things or not having done things, mostly out of exhaustion, out of being triggered myself, of not really always knowing how to exist in an environment that was not like what I was used to. And that also meant some decisions that were made that maybe I could have done differently. But I also know that was part of the process too. And I forgive those of you who didn't want me from the beginning, who weren't happy about my coming here, who maybe saw me and just thought, she's not a fit for this congregation. For those of you who really made my life very difficult here at times, those of you who wrote letters against me and made accusations oftentimes you had no idea about, you just took people's word and wrote letters. One of the most hurtful letters for me during the time that I was reapplying for this position, or rather that I was going forward for a contract renewal, said that the things that I was bringing to this congregation, like Day of the Dead, like Reverend Darrell Watkins, who spoke and gave such an eloquent biblical talk on the book of Esther, all while he was wearing women's clothes. He was in drag. That those types of things were not, and I'm quoting, were not Christian, not Unity, and not Southern. And that became such a hurtful moment for me that I really didn't realize I hadn't processed. But now I'm thankful for that, because I think that became the clarity for me of what was really happening in this church. First of all, I've said it before and I will say it again. We came out of COVID and there was a lot of grief and there was a lot of hurt and there was a lot of seeing the world that we had never seen before. There was that feeling that the world that we knew was lost or that we were losing it. And we needed just one thing to stay constant, and that was our spiritual community. I get it. I get it now. What I represented for so many of you was not just change and transformation, but I represented something new that was also scary. Something new that maybe you were not ready for. Something new that just by virtue of who I was pushed the envelope in ways that I couldn't even imagine. So when Reverend Darrell Watkins came here to celebrate Pride in June of 2023, he asked if I would be okay if he did it in drag. Well, I mean, he's a well-respected and gifted minister that sometimes does that. I mean, have at it. You know, you do you. That's your spirit. that is choosing to do that. I had no idea that it would create such a poop storm. But the sad part of it all, y'all, is I didn't know about it until months later. I really went on. I knew some people maybe were a little uncomfortable by it, but to the degree that people were uncomfortable, I really didn't know. Oftentimes, I've done things in my ministry, and folks have come up and said, wow, that was so brave. To which I was like, oh, shoot, what did I do? Like, I may have not done that if I'd known that it was like brave. I didn't do it to be brave. I just did it being me. And so I realize now that, even just being me was a lot for some of you all. I don't apologize for that because I'm just me. But I understand what was all behind some of the reacting and acting out. A lot of it has to do with our own triggers, our own pains, our own unresolved issues. And so when we see something that we think is not us, we react against it instead of looking at that as a mirror unto our own selves. We say that person doesn't fit. That person makes me uncomfortable. That person, it's always out, but not looking at what does that mean for me? I hold the discomfort. I hold that feeling. I hold the not belonging. It's me that has these issues that need to be resolved. And I look at myself too, because as I said, I was triggered too here in so many ways. And I'm not going to go into all of that, but I too was triggered. And so that's the journey, everyone. The journey is for us to come into spiritual community to lift up spirit. It's to come into spiritual community to be able to embody the Christ. It's to be able to come into spiritual community even when things are difficult and hard and uncomfortable, and embody the Spirit enough to say, what is mine here to do, not what is someone else's. I know that it's difficult to hear, and it has been difficult for some of you all to hear what I have shared in meetings and from the platform. And I do this in the spirit of just being transparent and honest. I don't do it as a way to be some kind of provocateur or to be able to create myself as a victim. I am not a victim. Let me be clear about that. I say this to you all because it's important that I share with you my experience. I am telling you all what I have lived here personally, not what I've seen, not what I've been told, but what I have lived here personally. And it is very difficult, hurtful, hard when I share my story of pain and someone says that I'm being divisive. That is the worst form of gaslighting for me, and that is also the way in which we're not hearing each other. Those of you who feel like I don't fit here, I respect what you think. It's okay. We all have a difference of opinion. But what I think is important to note is that we have to become a community, all of us, not just this community, Unity of Nashville, but communities, homes, the world. We have to become comfortable again with dialogue, with discourse, with being uncomfortable. That is really the crux of this all, is that people were uncomfortable and they couldn't handle it. We have to become again comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to become comfortable with courageous conversations. We have to be comfortable with hearing people's pain, even if it implicates us in that process. Even if we know that maybe in some sliver of a way we were part of that contribution to the pain, it's not about feeling guilty. It is not about feeling shameful. It's about taking your power, owning it, and then knowing what you and your little corner of the world can do to transform that pain. Maybe not for that person, but in the future. Some of you may think, you've won because I'm leaving. But I ask you, have you really? Have you really? In the quiet of your home, at night in bed, does that feel good to you? Has any of this felt good to you? And I think that will give you an indication about what Spirit is calling forth. We have to be comfortable with speaking out, and not in a way to be mean or hurtful, but in a way out of humility to call forth what our master teacher taught us. Jesus was the epitome of subversive. It was the gospel of subversion, and not in a way, again, to be cruel or to be egocentric. It was a way to say, you all, we have to do things differently. You all, something's not working here. Something is not working. Maybe for some of you it is, but for some of us it's not. If we call ourselves the beloved community, we have to hold space for those conversations. I know that it's not easy, but I have seen this community, like all communities, and I want you to understand, it's not about Unity of Nashville, really. This is just a microcosm of what is happening across the world in churches, in the world, period. This is nothing new. We may feel like it's unique to us, but it's really not. I talk to my colleagues all the time. I read research all the time. This is not new. But you all have the opportunity as a legacy church, as a church that has been in the unity movement for over 106 years, to be the leaders in the change, to be the change, to create a different kind of culture, not one that closes a blind eye to what is uncomfortable, not one that ignores the bylaws for expediency's sake, not one that ignores the bylaws because we don't want to hurt people or ruffle any feathers or, dare I say, create division. There has to be a way in which the integrity of this church becomes number one, and the integrity of God and God consciousness become number one. As I move out of this position, as I lovingly release this position, as I open up the space for something new and wonderful and joyous for this community, I also encourage everyone to be able to speak your truths here, not to think that if you speak your truth that you will be in the wrong or you will be disliked for it. I encourage everyone to be able to pray, to use the foundations that Unity has given us of prayer and meditation daily to be able to call forth a new energy in this church. I invite you all to be able to have those hard conversations around race and sexuality and gender and North versus South and newness and oldness and old members versus new members and all the various ways in which things have happened here that nobody has talked about. It becomes important to have those conversations because I guarantee you some folks may say, well, she's leaving and so the problems are going with her. Guess what, folks? They ain't. I have inherited a church, or I inherited a church and everything that came before me. All of the predecessors, all of the drama, all of the trauma, all of the hurts, all of the things that happened, all of the unresolved issues that happened here have become part of that. I want to share just something with you all. I am currently in a class for Unity Worldwide Ministries, and we're learning about a lot of this, sort of like maybe daily and a dollar short, but not really. And Reverend Dr. Gary Simmons and Jane Simmons are leading this class. Some of y'all may know Gary Simmons from Eye of the Storm, Reverend Jane and Reverend Gary from the Q process. But he says this, and I think it's really important so that we understand what I'm talking about. He said, all spiritual communities have some degree what Eckhart totally refers to as a pain body, an energetic rift in the field of wholeness, oneness, and interdependency. The ministry's pain body is associated with past traumas, conflicts, disappointments, losses, etc. The minister is often cast in the role of parent or primary caregiver of the family dynamic. Whenever there is a ministerial change, the community is impacted as if a parent has left the family. The impact of the comings and goings of ministry leaders over time looms large on community members who may be grieving or in conflict over circumstances. Each ministerial era possesses the unresolved issues of the past, contained in the unhealed hearts of congregants and encapsulated in the stories of the ministry. It is a common phenomenon for the successor to inherit the unresolved issues when assuming leadership of a spiritual community. I say this to you because all of this is happening in a situation where over the last years you have a 30% increase in people that are unchurched, that represent 38 million people. Research shows that of the people that consider themselves unchurched, 70% of those people believe that churches are part of the problem, not the solution. So I leave you all by asking you all, how is each and every one of you going to become part of the solution? Not just the board, not just the volunteers, not a new minister, each and every one of you. We are called into spiritual community, not to think about the beloved community, not to learn about the beloved community, not to talk about the beloved community, not to read about the beloved community, but to be the beloved community, to be God in expression. Oftentimes we think that our lives have so little meaning, that we live in this little corner of the world and we're hurting and we're depressed and we're addicted and we're all of these things and we have nothing to offer. And I say to you, you do. You matter. This matters for everyone. What we move into is a time where each of us become both a death doula and a birth doula. We come into a time where we have to embrace and let go of the old and put it in hospice. I'm not saying everything. I'm a woman of legacy. I believe in our ancestral past and honoring it. But there also has to be a deep letting go, because there has to be a time for the new birth. If we don't allow for that, we will be in stagnancy and we will remain in the same place. And not only will this church become obsolete, but the entire Unity movement will become obsolete, and maybe churches altogether. It becomes important for us to understand our role in this. I want to move to close by sharing a quote by Meister Eckhart, a German mystic and philosopher from the 12 and 1300s. And he says, "We are all meant to be mothers of God. What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place unceasingly, but doesn't take place in myself? And what good is it to me if Mary is full of grace if I am not also full of grace? What good is it to me for the Creator to give birth to his Son if I do not give birth to him in my time and culture? This then is the fullness of time when the Son of God is begotten in us. The Son of God, Christ consciousness, the higher consciousness, the love, the light, the divine guidance, pure heart, allowing not from our ego, not from what we want, not from what our friends around us want, but what is really, truly true. And so I invite everyone to move forward from today, not just in this space, but in your own lives, asking yourself, am I really embodying the Christ here? Am I really speaking from Christ consciousness? Am I really making a decision with a heart full of love? Am I really allowing divine mind to source me and not my ego or what I think I know or what feels in my world to be right? This becomes the hallmark of a true and guided community that is guided by Holy Spirit. And see, let me make no bones about it. There is spirit moving everywhere in this room. I stay every Sunday, and I've stayed here for 2.5 years because I have felt it, and I know it, and I see it, and I hear it. Those of you who feel that it's not are mistaken. Allow for it to be. But you can't allow it to be if you're in that mind where someone else is the problem. It is not someone else. We have to look at ourselves and say, what is mine to do? What do I need to heal within me to be able to receive a new message, to be able to be open to a new way of being? You need to look around and know the world is changing, and I know it's scary. But you can either choose to be part of that change, or you can hold it hostage and not allow for everyone else who's ready to take flight to just be in that fear with you. Again, I know this is hard. Take a deep breath. I repeat as I end, I love each and every one of you. I love this community. I believe in what can be done here. But there needs to be a refocus and a doubling down on what really is truth principle. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do I know when I am doing it? And there has to be a question of the decisions that are made, and there has to be an understanding that sometimes people want to serve in communities, but they may not have the social or emotional calibration to do so. It doesn't mean they don't have the skill. It doesn't mean they don't have a place in this community. It only means that we have to be really vigilant about the leadership of a church, which means that minister included, is of the highest consciousness, because everything will then fall or rise from there. I know I've said a lot, and I've said it in a stream of consciousness. I thank you all for this opportunity to share with you all. And I just want to let you know that my ministry will continue. I didn't know what it meant to come here. I didn't know what it meant to leave here. But I do know now that I was brought to the South to do exactly what I did. And I'm proud of everything that I did. I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had to do it here with all of you. Maybe all I was supposed to do was bring color here. I don't know. Sparkles. I don't know. And if that was all, hey, I'll accept it. I want to thank you all for the honor, the privilege, and the blessing of being the Unity of Nashville Senior Minister for all of this time. Thank you.